is an alliance between Satanists and National Socialists not as far-fetched as it may initially appear?
Well, there are some strangely oriented people out there, and they just like to be strange. Hey, look at me! Look how strange I am, you know. And so Satan is strange, but Satanic-nazi is even more strange. So that's got to be great. That's even better still. But they don't have much of a grasp of what LaVey was actually hitting at, much less what National Socialism is supposed to be about. Mm-hmm. So they hardly matter. Mm-hmm.
We are live. Could you do a George Norrie voice?
Who's George Norrie?
From Coast to Coast AM?
Coast to Coast.
Oh, man. Fuck. Wait, was he the guy? I thought
East of the Rockies or on?
George Norrie?
Art Bell and George Norrie.
Art Bell is the one that I was more familiar with, yeah. That guy had a great voice. I can't think of it now, but it was really...
Yeah, me neither. I'd recognize it if I heard it, though.
It was like this PBS kind of comforting old man voice telling you about like fucking transdimensional monsters that will appear in your kitchen if you live in the wrong part of America. Good stuff.
Yes.
Oh.
All right, well, here we are. The Empire never ended.
Yeah. So it's still us. It's still Fritz and Boris and Ray, and we're still doing this.
We are still doing this. And because we're still doing this, we're doing some sort of let's call it a mid-season or mid-arc wrap-up to kind of get us...
Yeah, touch base. We covered a lot. We covered a lot. They've been very dense episodes full of really dense people. Maybe good to
the two main individuals we covered are James Mason and David Myatt, which are both quite striking and, I don't know, very specific people. So maybe it would be useful to somehow compare them by this point.
Yeah, and I think our growing Nazi listener base will appreciate that.
That's something we've discovered over
big shout out
since we began. Is that
our
Nazis listen, or they let us know that they listen. At least I'm sure.
Yeah.
I hope they're not the only listeners.
Yeah, that would be weird. That'd be weird.
That would be extremely weird.
But, it's mostly Nazis giving comments lately. We got it says a lot. It says a lot about what's going on in these guys' lives that they found out, like, a brand new podcast with, like, no promotion.
Yeah, we have, no followers on any relevant social media.
Come on, guys. Come on.
These motherfuckers just really seek out any single thing that is made about them, instantly.
Man.
But we'll get to all that.
Some other fun news that'd be good to talk about, I think, is David Myatt went ahead or I guess people around him went ahead and dropped like an hour and 20 minutes of him talking to Nick Lowles. Yeah,
it's an old recording from '98, but now it's on YouTube.
And why I can't fathom. I can't fathom why. It's like a straight hour of him just weaseling out of questions, just lying his little ass off and sounding like a complete prick. And they thought, like, people really need to hear this.
Yeah, Nick Lowles is a British anti-fascist at the time he was from Searchlight and now he's from Hope Not Hate. So in '98 he interviewed David Myatt and kind of confronted him with evidence that he had that he's Anton Long and connected to Order 9 Angles in some pub in the village where Matt lived or lives still. Yeah.
You can hear the sound of what we think is like Sonic the Hedgehog or maybe like a pinball Sonic the Hedgehog. Just like
I'm 90% sure it's
and
Sonic.
Ostensibly, it was made to to clear his name of being Anton Long, of being the founder of the Order of Nine Angles. And I mean, it
doesn't do that at all.
It's an hour of evidence that he is Anton Long. Like, it's...
Yeah, I mean, the people who published it wrote it in the description like, well, if you had any doubts until now.
If you had any doubts.
Like
about what, though?
When you hear, like, how honest he sounds, you will be completely, convinced that he's not Anton Long.
Why would the O9A care, then? If this is somebody that has no real affiliation, of a vague affiliation with the Order of Nine Angles.
The whole thing is him being asked a question about, certain people that he's friends with or that use his P.O. box for O9A stuff, and being like,
P.O. boxes.
I couldn't possibly answer that question. You'll have to ask them themselves. And they're just like that's the entire fucking thing.
It is just him weaseling. It's like he's like a Republican that got caught with like dick pics on a teenager's phone or something. Like, this is how it sounds.
I mean, it's a kind of like a textbook example of lying for an hour. Like, I mean, he does everything that someone teaches you not to appear like you're lying. He does everything wrong. I mean,
yeah, he does. And then and then when he gets completely backed into a corner, when it's just unmistakably clear that he's a lying piece of shit, that's when he's like, well, if you persist in this line of questioning, I'll be forced to challenge you to a duel.
Yes, he says...
with deadly weapons.
Hearing people like you continue to publish allegations based upon no evidence whatsoever, based on supposition, based on circumstance, which is not proof, and condemn a person through rumours, allegation and circumstantial evidence, which may well be misconstrued, then I will feel it honour and duty bound to challenge the person who publishes that under whatever guise, be it in television or be it in newspapers or a magazine, to a actual physical duel to prove my own honour. And by a duel I mean with deadly weapons. So there is a possibility of one of the participants being actually killed. That is what I mean by a duel.
Gun, or are you talking about?
Yes, I'm talking about a gun, or if you prefer, knives. If you are the challenge, if I challenge you to a duel because you publish lying, dishonourable.
Are you challenging me to a duel?
If you publish atrocious lies about me, yes, I will physically challenge you to a duel.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Close is like dying laughing to his face while he's saying this.
And it's like, where are we gonna do this duel? Like, where? Yeah, it's fantastic. I have access to 5 people who can provide me with a firearm.
Which I'm sure in England's a pretty big flex, but like the way that he says it just makes him sound like, like, I have friends that are cool in my school, like, everybody fears me.
Yeah, he sounds like a kid from school
Truly.
that's like lying every day to his friends, and everyone knows that he's lying and think that he's
But what is he, like 60 in this interview?
Yeah, right.
I mean, probably younger than that. So this is 98. He was born in like around 1950,
Oh, okay.
52,
All
something
right. Well,
like
he's
this.
still a grown-ass man. Come on.
Yeah, he is a full-grown adult who is talking about how he's going to duel some dude because they talk shit.
I mean, like he first says how he knew only one person who was ever in his life who was connected to the ONA.
I know one person who was involved with it a long time ago.
Then he switches to, okay, yes, I knew 2 people.
Maybe 2. It's 2 people. That's all. It's only and ever always been 2 people, nothing more.
In the course of 25 years, and and then he also says he knew a few people. Then he admits that he tried to infiltrate the ONA,
Right.
but then he denies that means being a member of it. So he was somehow infiltrating it without joining
Just
it.
by having
which
some
is
friends,
like kind of,
I think he says at one point.
Yeah.
I said one of the groups I infiltrated was the ONA for political purposes. Now, by that I meant that I met some people who were involved with it, and I got to know them.
Like,
I
infiltrate.
mean, he doesn't know what the word infiltrate means, obviously. I mean,
Just because I infiltrated didn't mean I joined the group or did anything with them. It's like, well, then you didn't fucking infiltrate them, dog. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's great.
What the fuck
And then
are you
Nick
talking
just starts like fucking listing like P.O. boxes that have published O9A literature, and they're one after the other are David's, and he keeps saying, like, I gave those away. I don't know why someone would use them in any way that they would. And I think Nick says something like,
It's strange then, that every time you hand the box over, after 56 million people in Britain, it just happens to pop into the order of 9 angles every time.
No, it's a... No.
Amazing.
Yeah, and he says, "Well, I gave them away," and then
He
like
says it could be a
Nick
coincidence, yes.
yeah, and then Nick points out that like, well, okay, this PO box they first published ONA stuff and then a David Myatt text,
Right.
And then he's like, "Well, I don't know, I don't remember, like I can't explain that."
Yeah, his explanation is basically like, I can't control what my fans do. Like,
Right. Yeah. Well, I sympathize with that.
And when like Nick presented him a text which is signed as David Myatt and has some ONA content in it, he said like, "Well, that's like someone else wrote that text and signed my name." So like,
I love the one too. I mean, it's a small point, but it's so telling. It's when David's like none of my work is copyrighted, and Nick's like, wait, what the fuck does this say? Read that. Didn't you write this? It says like copyrighted. And he's like, well, it's bollocks. And he's like, so is it copyrighted or not? And he's like, none of my work is copyrighted. Like it's there
for
in front of
political
him.
propaganda.
Amazing. Totally amazing.
Oh, to me, it's very telling that the first thing Myatt says in the interview when Nick mentions ONA, Myatt says, like, "Well, what do you think the ONA is? Do you think it's like just one person or like an actual group or something like that?" And kind of Nick doesn't notice that and just, doesn't pay much attention to it. But to me, like, that completely gave it away that Myatt is behind ONA.
Yeah.
Because, like, he obviously knew, like, what ONA was, and that's probably, like, one person, basically, with maybe one or two his friends in the course of 20 years who were helping him out occasionally.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great interview. I think I needed it. I needed to hear it.
Yeah, it came at an interesting time too, right? 'Cause I think like, I'm not saying it's related at all, but they dropped it pretty much after our Myatt series.
Yeah.
But they were writing comments and stuff like that, people who were definitely ONA people. And then all of a sudden they dropped this to prove that, David Myatt isn't Anton Long, but it's completely
It's bonkers.
backfired. I mean, like, nobody who listens to this will come away with like a feeling that, oh yeah,
You say that.
Anton Long is definitely not David Myatt.
You say that, but the comments were like, oh, to hear the real man, it's...
No, those are not the comments. It's like what the people who published it wrote.
Right.
There are no comments.
Description.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting because he says how, like, the reason he had anything to do with a group like an ONA is because of he thought that it would be useful to recruit those people,
Right.
and his motivation was only political always.
For political purposes.
Yes, yes. But in his autobiography, he says that, like, from his, like, Gladio connected buddies in column 88, they together decided to start an occult group.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically admits that, and now he admits in this interview that the group was ONA. But so basically, if you cross the interview with his autobiography, you would come to the conclusion that he started the ONA.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I can't be responsible for things that I wrote. You'd have to ask me.
Yeah.
It's just like clearly lying,
tool.
because if you know anything about his biography, as Ray just pointed out, he goes on like a little spiel there about how just occult is bullshit, and that, like, he infiltrated them because he wanted to get them to convert them to, like, real values, like that of honor that he lives by, and that he thinks that they're actually, what they do is a bunch of bullshit and morally repugnant or whatever, and he would never associate himself with that.
So, I mean, what is your view on the order of 9 angles?
It's a load of crap, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think its morality stinks. I think everything I know about it is completely against everything that I stand for and believe in.
Yeah.
And yet.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and like, so he wants to recruit them, but he thinks that they're disgusting and morally repugnant.
Right.
And then Nick says, like, what? So why would you recruit these people? Like, why would you think they're good recruits? And he said, well, they were not like good recruits. Like, that's something that I thought like 25 years ago. But then he admits that he also has, like, throughout 25 years, he had connections with them.
Well, not to mention his fucking roommate, you know, is Richard Malt, which comes up quite a lot in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nick says, like, so, I mean, Richard Malt at the time is like I think the official head of ONA.
Yeah.
And like, the interviewer, Nick Lowell, says, like, you lived with the bloke,
right.
like, at the moment. And he says, like, that twice, and Myatt doesn't deny it, that they live together.
Is that where he says, like, he you know, you live with the bloke, and Myatt's trying to claim that he doesn't know how old Richard Malt actually is? He's like, well, he could be in his late 20s, 30s, I don't know. Like,
yeah, because like Malt at the time is like 20, like less than 30 years old, and then at first Myatt claimed how he only knew one person who was connected to ONA like 25 years ago, which Malt was like 2 years old at that time. So it's clearly two people. Then he admits that he knew two people. One is Malt, and the other is a mysterious person that he won't discuss, who is now he says, like in well-known academic guy at some institution, and then Nick asks if this is Oxford. So it is implied that this is some well-known professor who was. I mean, in some.
But there has been some discussion about this before, right? I mean,
I mean, there's this like Kaplan, I think is the name.
Jeffrey Kaplan.
Jeffrey Kaplan, some academic from Canada who like wrote some book about neo-Nazism or something, and then one of his sources was David Myatt. And this is like controversial because Kaplan like was one of the rare people who actually believed anything that David Myatt said. And in that book, I mean, I think he only writes like 5 pages about ONA and David Myatt, but he says that he thinks that David Myatt is not Anton Long, that this other guy who is this Oxford connected academic, mysterious, is probably the real Anton Long. And for this reason, David Myatt doesn't stop mentioning this book all the time, like as some kind of significant like source. Only, I mean, there's like 5 pages in the book about it, and he's the only, I mean, the source for the information in the book. But it's like a legitimate book, I guess. So that's some kind of proof that he's not Anton Long. So to me, it's not clear if this Oxford professor connected to ONA even exists. Like, I mean, I would be inclined to think that Myatt completely made him up. But I mean, it's interesting that in the interview, Nick pretends or generally seems to know who this person is. Like, and then David Myatt is genuinely like intrigued if Nick is now researching this person or is pretending to be intrigued.
So he gets kind of upset about it too.
Yeah,
right?
he does.
He's like, you know,
a little flustered.
And Nick kind of fucks with him there too, because he's like, "Well, you're not answering my questions. How the fuck should I answer your question?"
No, it's someone in the Oxfordshire area.
I'm not commenting about that. Who is this person anyway? Who do you think it is?
Then I can't comment on it, can I?
Come on, tell me.
Then I can't comment on it.
Why not?
It will be revealed in time.
Will it? Are you researching into this person, may I ask?
Sorry?
Are you researching into this person? No, come on, answer honestly.
Right.
Are you?
Right.
Because I want to know.
Does it concern you? Are you still in contact with this person?
I want to know.
Are you still in contact with this person?
I'm not going to comment about that.
Tell me if you're still in contact.
Are you going to tell me whether you're investigating this person or not?
I mean,
Are you investigating this person?
Might be pretending like to be upset by it. So I mean, I would probably say I will kind of inclined to believe that that's the truth, that this person doesn't even exist. But who knows? Maybe.
I'm inclined to believe you there because I mean, nobody has seemingly has any information about this mysterious person other than David Myatt, right? So it sounds like it's a figment of David Myatt's imagination.
Maybe we'll have the chance to ask Nick if he actually. I mean, he will probably be the person to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nick, hit us up. Come on. Well, that this petty posh dickhead, I think like smack dab in the middle of his jihadist period, talked some shit on James Mason's own mentor, William Pierce.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know, I read it, I saw it before I listened to the interview, and then I finished it after the interview, and man, it really, really becomes harder to read once you know what he really sounds like. It's fucking insufferable to have that voice in your head.
Unlike Myatt, William Pierce, total psycho and asshole, but he was a genuine physicist.
Maybe that was his first beef.
I mean, he was like a doctor of physics, I think.
Yeah. Dr. Pierce. So he wrote this thing in 2003. Well, whatever 141 year of Fan is, something.
Yeah,
something
which I
like
think
that.
is 2003.
Yeah, right. So
we've had
going
problems
down that hole
calculating this
again.
in the past. But.
Yeah, no. I thought that part of my life was over. So it's never going to be over, is it? Just
Never,
tell me,
Fritzy.
guys. I'll never have to not know which year the year of Fan is in people years. All right, so he writes a brief criticism of William Pierce, but there's really no, like, he doesn't have that kind of the jihadi voice in this at all. It's very much kind of his general abandoning extremism sort of thing, which I guess he was doing around the same time as he was a jihadist. So whatever, man. That guy sucks. But here he writes this. William Pierce has come. Oh, how does he fucking sound though? He's we know it so well now. Can you hit me with a little Myatt there, Boris?
He has that kind of almost like up talk.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
William Pierce is in like kind of.
It's sort of pleading. It's pleading,
Yes,
but it's
yes,
also
exactly.
insulting.
It's pleading, but it's also insulting.
It's just yes, it's like that. Yeah.
Just think of the way he says political purposes.
political purposes.
He says that like a million times.
Yes.
It's for National Socialism. His refusal to say P.O. Box is hilarious. Too.
It is, yeah. And it keeps saying P.O. Box, and then he has like a spree where he just says Post Office Box like 7 times in a row.
I was not personally, I never don't think I ever put anything out personally from that post office box. Other people put my stuff out from that post office box, which is not the same thing. The fact that somebody puts my writing out from a post office box does not mean that I am associated with that post office box.
Anyway. So, okay, I don't want to get too far into this. It's mostly that William Pierce doesn't understand honor and is too racist. That's what it boils down to. Unlike the Nazis, William Pierce is too racist. And
so this is like the early 2000s. So this is also the period, I think, when he was super close to Richard Mould and when they had their like Reichsvolk experiment. And the so-called ethical national socialism.
Yes, cosmic ethics.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the period after the NSM connection with the David Copeland, the nail bomber. And so his only and closest friend, Richard Mould, was super scared because of this connection. And I think wanted to get away from that as far as he could. So I think the whole ethical national socialism was a way for Myatt to stay close to his only friend.
Right.
So I guess these kind of texts are product of this period.
It is in, though...
and this is when he's a Muslim, too, which, in Islam
Yeah.
doesn't see race.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I guess the only kind of interesting part of this at all is where I think I can kind of see maybe him and Mason coming to blows if they had to really deal with this criticism, is that... what's his fucking name? David. That David thinks that William Pierce doesn't really get like science and the future and stuff like that. It doesn't have like a sort of science fiction utopist mindset, which would be like,
because he's an actual scientist.
Well, sure, there's that. But I finished physics. And so he has a little section just called the future. This shit is straight Myatt. This is the uncut Myatt.
Pierce has no numinous suprapersonal goal to which people can aspire. Instead, there are only the old ideas and the barbaric concepts of struggle and domination. In contrast, I have stressed the importance of the numinous idea of continuing our evolution by accepting the challenge of outer space. No, I'm doing fucking
Getting to that's like the other
David
James
Attenborough.
Mason.
No, it's like David Attenborough, you know, like I'm going into David Attenborough. It is a noble vision of a galactic empire or federation. I don't know if I can do it without laughing.
He's in our heads. He's in our heads, man. Get him out of your head.
It is a noble vision of a galactic empire or federation created by honorable, rational warriors, explorers, and colonists, which can inspire us towards excellence and which can bring human beings together in a way which benefits us all and which expresses our very humanity.
So
I'm sorry to our English listeners.
You don't have to apologize to the English.
We've been criticized about this before.
So
they're cringing right now as they listen. They're like,
Well, we're not criticizing.
this regional accent is not correct at all.
Yeah. They just said it's dodgy. They didn't criticize. They said
it's
shit.
dodgy. Lots of cool shit's dodgy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that one night.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so what Pierce never talked about going to space, I guess. That's one problem. And the other problem is that Pierce doesn't have a strong conception of like the folk community and is too racist. And Myatt claims in this text that he's always been above that. He's always been above racism.
Yeah, especially when he was hanging out with Charlie Sargent.
Exactly. Yeah.
That had nothing to do with racism.
No, come on.
It was about loyalty and honor. Yeah.
I can't speak for Charlie Sargent.
Yes. That's the thing. I can do him in short bursts, but when you have to like sustain, because he actually kind of talks in these like.
Oh God, he apparently can. I mean, he rambles. He's a fucking rambler.
He rambles when he writes, but when he speaks, he's very like not. You know, he's very short, right? And the whole interview is just him.
Well, yeah, I mean, because he was very calculated, at least tried to be, like, because he was lying the whole time, so he had to, I mean, there are also these pauses that he makes when you know that he's trying to think of a lie that's most, like, convenient for him, because he's trying to, in the interview, he's all the time trying to think, like, what is next move going to be. So, like, and you can see, like, it's basically almost like he became like talking to a cop or in a court or something. He's like, he's calculating all the time, and he says, like, Nick asked him, when did you open that PO box? And he says, well, I don't know, I think it was 93. And then, like, but maybe it was earlier, maybe it was like 90. I think he's thinking, like, okay, is he going to now, does he have that pamphlet that I published, like, in 91, you know? So, like, yeah, he sounds like that all the time.
And you know there's no way that he doesn't know exactly, like, the day that he opened that box, too. Like,
well, why didn't Nick just ask him in YF years? That would have got a straight answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then he would have to calculate it himself, which no fucking sane person wants to do. Ever.
Oh, that would have made it worth it. So that was kind of some David Myatt news, I guess. The not much Mason news out there, but I think he's, you know, we just finished.
Somebody did comment on a Mason fan commented on the trailer we released for Mason for the first Mason episode, which was kind of funny. He alleges that we did not, in fact, read Siege. He got this from the what is it, 20-second intro or whatever.
Yeah, it's about a minute and a half.
It's about a minute and a half. But yeah, he concludes from that we definitely didn't read Siege, that it's the most misunderstood book on the internet, which, if there's one thing that Siege is not, it's misunderstood. It's very clear. In fact, I think Mason himself would, you know, say that it's pretty hard to misunderstand Siege.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not difficult.
Pretty clearly, it's not difficult at all.
No.
I mean, it's fucking hard to read. It's repetitive. It's nonsensical, and it scrapes your soul from your body. But apart from that, it's an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, it's the opposite of Myatt's writings. Like, it's very open about what it is.
This guy, though, also, I don't think this guy himself really read Siege, though, because...
Has anybody actually read, like, all fucking 12 million pages of Siege? I mean,
we
yes,
fucking did.
But do you think any of these Nazis have?
This is what pisses me off. This guy's going to comment that we didn't fucking read it when he writes this, imagine believing you're somehow moral or clever for wanting to conserve institutions that have been occupied and weaponized against you. The founding fathers certainly wouldn't have. They did what they had to do. And then he ends it with an American flag. Like, did he not read Siege? So I hope, you know what, man? I hope you pay us some money, become a patron, and check out those episodes. Maybe you'll learn a couple things.
I think that was an attempt of like some damage control by a Siege build person, like who I think that the posting those founding fathers thing and the American flag was not a genuine thing. I think it was like a way to like persuade uninitiated people that we are not right about Siege, that somehow it's, you know, a different thing that we describe it to be, that somehow, you know, like the founding fathers were Siege build and
he's going to be
and
pissed
although
that
we
no
tell
one
you
can
not
read
to read it, that you probably should, right? Because we get it wrong.
Yeah, well, he did say we have an 80 IQ take, which...
cool.
I mean, at least that much, right? Yeah, so maybe I was thinking that maybe this is kind of what brings, though, Myatt and Mason together is kind of exactly in Myatt's critique of Pierce here, because the people who apparently read Siege thinking it's about like a white tribal future, which, okay, I guess there's something in there, but that's not like the bulk of it by any means. This is like the move away from some conception of the state, and like doubling up on the idea of the organic state. I think the one that like rises from the blood and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know much about how Pierce conceived of that, but I know that he was a party man. So
right. I mean, he was like a traditional Nazi.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also like he moved away from the label itself. So he was a total Nazi, but he gave up on the National Socialist label and had connections with European like neo-fascist, like the National Democratic Party in Germany and things like that. So he, I think, kind of realized that he needs to get away from the Nazi label in some way. So I guess he was more pragmatic. Although, I mean, he was very American also. He had his own church, I think, which is kind of...
That's the way to do it in America.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which was not a Christian church. I never got into like what it actually was, but...
Those of you in the UK listening to this, a church in America is sort of like a coven in the UK.
Except that it's tax-free.
Right.
Which is why you do it.
Yeah. But in some way, you can see how he influenced, I mean, Mason. In some ways, they're very similar. They're very very ordinary kind of, you know, dad types, I would say. Like
they do have a strong...
They're like no nonsense
kind
of... Yeah, very like... They seem very shallow, you know... No, like, grand stories, no, like, epic stories, nothing very uplifting, you know, it's kind of no-nonsense stuff, I would say.
It's full of nonsense. It's no...
Well, Myatt's like the dad that lies to you about the shit that he did in his life. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Mason would definitely not do that. Mason, yes. Yeah, Mason would straight up ask his 15-year-old son for his girlfriend's phone number.
Yes.
Yes. You know.
And be like, here, smoke up, Johnny. Or whatever.
I mean, William Pierce was like married a few times by like some women that he found like in these like ads, like Eastern European women, like Hungary and something like this, and then they would stick with him for a couple of years and then leave him. And I mean, he was, you know, kind of yeah.
Well, that's a shame. If he had just lived a little while longer, you know, he would have had lots of Hungarian fans.
Yeah.
Sorry, no shade. Some shade. Can we talk on the subject of like teenage girls? What that shit was in the Myatt interview? Was that Nick reading like some Dreckian Way stuff? That was supposed to be Molt, right?
No, he was reading an article from Fenrir, supposedly written by a woman, but I mean it's probably written by David Myatt, and it's some fantasy about having sex with a 12-year-old girl.
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and in the fucking interview, Myatt's like, please stop reading it, just stop.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So put it away. What a piece of shit. Nick's like cackling again when he does that too, because he knows, you know.
Yeah.
The fucking author.
Yeah, he knows who wrote that shit.
Yeah,
like, all right, I'll put it away. Fucking
I mean, that's the kind of, then compare that, maybe insert clip here of Mason's opinion on this subject.
Underage girls are sheer dynamite.
So the contrast is quite clear, but also, it's hard to choose between what is worse between these two options. I mean, yeah, I guess you can say that Mason is more honest, but
but
it's super annoying, this kind of attitude, you know. Like, I mean,
it's supposed to breed this air of like untouchability, I guess. You know, he's a man with nothing to hide, which is, I don't know. I guess there's something to that because he's done so many terrible things to young women. I guess it says a lot about the world we live in that he can be that out front about it.
Yeah. Fenrir, by the way, is the official journal of the Order of Nine Angles. Yeah.
I think what's happening in the background of the Myatt interview, okay, compared to like this interview from 2003 with Mason, that was done to research like the biographical introduction of like a later edition of Siege or something, right?
Yeah, that interview is done by Ryan Schuster, a Nazi who did the second edition of Siege. So I guess it's some kind of a preparation for that.
So, yeah, that's the one where he's like very starstruck, right? I mean, he's like so nervous interviewing James Mason that he's like repeating himself, and like, you know, like you can tell that he's kind of having a hard time, you know, processing the fact that he's in the same room with his greatest idol.
Yeah, he's freaking out a little. But what's going on in the background of these two interviews, I think, is telling. Because in the Myatt one, it's like we said, it's like Sonic the Hedgehog, but like it really just sounds insane. You know, you don't register it as like Sonic the Hedgehog immediately. You register it as like a circus, like a carnival kind of. It's because
it's like recorded on like a tape, and then they tried to like. I mean, they actually prided themselves on the fact that they cleaned up the audio, which means that the original sounded
must have been
total
awful.
fucking shit.
Yeah.
Because this sounds terrible too. I mean, you can hear the coins on Sonic constantly like.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it also drives home the sort of like carnival-esque absurdity of what David Myatt is. You know, this like 3-ring circus of what occultic mess. You know. And then in the background of the Mason one, like what happens? Like his fucking 15-year-old lover walks in to pick up some shit, right?
Yeah. And he has the picture of like Charles Manson right behind him.
Yeah, it's just a picture of Charles Manson, a beer, the label of which he's picked clean.
Yes.
My feeling was that was not his young lover. To me, it sounded like it was some relative or a mother, even some older woman who was interrupting the interview.
Was it? I heard.
Yeah, I think so.
I heard a younger girl.
Maybe, maybe I was wrong.
Okay, well, I don't know.
I mean, this was just a few years. When he was finally out of prison after spending most of the 90s in prison. So maybe he was like not so much into that after that. But I don't know, because he was in prison because of yes.
Let's just be clear about what he was in prison for. It wasn't being a revolutionary. It was being an old pervert. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was a French academic. Then, I mean, he could claim that was him being a revolutionary. For him, unfortunately, when you're a Nazi, you cannot say that you're revolutionary by having sex with minors. But
it's just not their time yet.
Is that a Foucault jab there, or what?
Or just general French people jab? I mean, is there any like French person who, intellectual especially, but in general, who's not kind of into that? I mean, they were like, they were signing petitions there. Like everyone was, like they wanted to abolish the age of consent. I think it was a big deal. Like Sartre signed that, Simone de Beauvoir. Yeah.
Well, this is where James Mason might actually like something about France.
He does borrow from the left a lot, so...
He doesn't borrow from the left as much as just quote things.
Well, I mean, he borrowed like names. He borrowed naming conventions anyway, and also like the.
Well,
language.
I mean, he quotes like Mao and shit, but like he's never read Mao. I mean,
but he does do those like we need to like have revolutions, overthrow the ruling class, blah 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 blah. But of course, it's not the same idea of the ruling class.
No, yeah, it's Rahowa.
Is there anything worth talking about with the Temple of Blood?
Well, okay, maybe Mason Myatt has more. Like we didn't talk about the. This is also two clips. Oh no, one clip that you can use. The I don't know. Maybe Boris knows better to describe it. The way both of them described that scene that I mentioned many times now, how they realized the true nature of the world and blah blah.
Yeah.
So Myatt was moving with his parents, and then just when they were in the street, he knew to which house they will move in, and then he realized there is so much to human potential that he didn't realize until that point.
Yeah, because he experienced deja vu for like the first time.
Yes. And then Mason has a kind of similar experience, but very, very Mason.
Yeah, I mean Mason's experience was being in a bohemian neighborhood, as he said, at a coffee shop, and then meeting a sex worker who then propositions that they go to some abandoned house.
I turned away, and I went, and I had my cake, and I had my coffee, and I read my mail, and I was on my way home, and I heard a voice from behind me saying, "Hey, mister, you got time for a date?" And I turned around, and it's this little prostitute, because this was the prostitute district. And I said, I only have a $10 food stamp on me. And I'll take it. Well, she said, let's go back to my place. And she led me across streets and through vacant lots and up embankments and through holes in fences. As the crow flies, well, we ended up at that garden level apartment on that alley.
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought about that. I said, that's got to be one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me. Now, how do we explain this? My philosophy has become either a thing is real or it's not. Mm-hmm. If it's not, let's dispense with it. If it is real, we better find out its workings. Mm-hmm. So I thought about this. Now, how could this have been? Well, I guess I had to have already been there. Would you call it in the future or would you call it in the past? I had already been there. And I was about to go there again.
So it's kind of similar, even more similar to Myatt, because they both saw something before they went there and they knew that this is where they're going. So it's exactly the same thing, except in Mason's case, it's not parents, it's like a sex worker and exchanging food stamps with her. So this is kind of the difference between their two styles, I guess.
Which he knows. Yeah. It's definitely emblematic of the difference between
and for both of them, this
styles.
is kind of a significant event in their life, after which they realize the true nature of reality, which is kind of,
this like opened up their third eye. They saw the world for, this like deeper experience because deja vu.
And this is why we have ONA and also
Siege.
Yeah. And Mason believes that we are aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, Fritz, when you mentioned that in 2003 Myatt, criticized Pierce, it makes me think. So 2003 is the same year of the Mason interview, right? The one where the guy asked him about like jihad or whatever, and he goes on like one of my favorite tirades, which I don't remember exactly, but I do remember one part about it in particular, which the guy's asking him like what he thinks about like Islamist movements and stuff like that, and he thinks, of course, they're killing people, that's great, but then he says something like,
well, the Bible was and is intended for whites only, and it does come from an extraterrestrial or an inspired source. Whereas the Quran was whipped up by one individual, a non-white.
And so therefore it's not legitimate. But yeah.
I mean, which is very kind of a very Christian view, no? Like, the Bible is authentic and the Quran is like a copy, a falsification. Well, I mean, only, okay, he frames it differently. He says, okay, this one comes from the aliens and this doesn't.
This one's intended for white people. You know,
man, I went to the wrong church as a kid.
God is not some ethereal thing. He's our progenitor from space.
Yeah, the Quran was cooked up by Muhammad, who has no. He had to repurpose some of the the white man's knowledge for his own people, which makes it shitty, I guess.
That's a point of conflict too with Myatt, huh? Because Myatt would be more likely just to toss the whole thing as like a Magian, corruption of the Aryan folkway. And I think I was thinking, like, how does Mason deal with the Old Testament?
He specifically just read the Bible for racial references.
I mean, that's mostly the Old Testament. I think he's mostly into Old Testament, but he thinks that Aryans are the Jews, like the original Jews. I mean,
but then
he wrote a book which is called "When We Were All Jews," something like this. So,
oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think
great.
in his view, that's very connected to Christian identity and also to this. There is like a British precursor to Christian identity, which has kind of similar philosophy, but it was like philo-Semitic, and it was not anti-Semitic.
Yeah, what were they called? Like Israel?
I forgot.
Something like, I forgot too.
Well then,
they believe that like the ancient Britons were like one of the tribes of Israel or something like this.
It's like the Black Hebrew Israelites, but for white British people.
Yeah. So I think this influenced Christian identity, but they became very anti-Semitic. So, but they still have some of the same basic like foundations, and this comes out into this Mason's belief that actually, Aryans are the real Jews. So I mean, I don't know.
Walk me through that a little more. This is what the fuck does that mean to him?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't go into that, but I mean that's a whole different topic. I think. I mean, at some point we can do this evolution from this like British, like Israeli thing, and then how it became Christian identity.
Yeah, fine.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people.
It would actually be interesting to cover everybody who thinks that they're the lost tribe of Israel, because
that would be a great arc.
It exists throughout the world. I mean, even in Southeast Asia, there's what is it? In Myanmar, there's a ethnic group that like mass converted to Judaism like a few decades ago because they believed that they were actually like the true lost tribe of Israel or something.
Yeah.
They're in fucking Myanmar. I mean, it'd be an interesting subject to cover because it's pretty common anywhere in the kind of like Abrahamic world.
Yeah. I mean, I think a part of it is that they believe that like these ancient Aryans, they left. I think also like they believe that people who lived in Atlantis were Aryans, and then or Jews, I don't know, or both. And after it sunk, they made colonies. One of which was Egypt, and then from Egypt they moved to Britain and all over the place.
Some people have claimed that possibly the Atlanteans, their civilization was much more highly developed in many more ways than ours was, or is, and they actually had a capability of ESP intelligence.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, they had that. They had free energy, not hooked up to wires, not dependent on fossil fuel. They used the earth currents, the lie lines they called. These things were harnessed through such things as pyramids, through standing stones, and like that. And so in that regard alone, they were far superior to our civilization because they weren't poisoning themselves like we are.
But I mean, those kind of ideas had a lot of influence. Like even I think, for example, J.R. Tolkien was influenced by it because in his mythology you have those like Numenorians, like Aragorn is the ancestor of Numenorians.
Oof, Ray, now. Obviously, Aragorn was the descendant of the Numenorians. Now, listeners, we take errata like this very seriously and would like you to know that Ray has been submitted to a self-crit session to think about what he's done. Back to the show.
They were like the noble men who fought against the first Dark Lord, and they were like given this Numenor, which is his own version of Atlantis for this. And then after, when they lost faith and started worshipping Sauron, it sank. And then they made colonies in Middle Earth, like Gondor, and where Boromir lives, and there, which is kind of similar, like what some these British people believed, how Britain is a colony of, I don't know, Aryans from Egypt and Atlantis or something like this, who are actually Jews. So I don't know.
Ray just blessed us with his Tolkien knowledge.
Absolutely.
I bow my head down.
Yeah. But this is another really good point at which a lot of the stuff would have made great fantasy, but makes extremely terrible organizational, foundations and politics.
Yeah. I mean, also as a myth, it doesn't. I mean, it's very hard to transcribe into some actually like pragmatic myth to mobilize people around.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we hate Jews, but we are Jews. So, like, it's,
we hate Jews, but we're the real Jews. They're fake.
Yeah.
Because they're what, Khazars or whatever.
I don't know. Myths should be simple, I think, to work as mobilizing.
Gods are fucking insane. Watch out.
Yeah.
That's what most of them are about. Yeah.
Is it that nobody actually wants to be from Great Britain and they just make up some other origins? Not being from that, like, rock and...
Well, you can give, you can at least give, like, the O9A a little credit for being, like, uber British, just really digging into it. Meeting in
I mean, certainly rooted
marshes.
in British occult, like, tradition, which is exclusively almost modern. So, I mean, the tradition is not that old.
Right.
It claims to be old. I mean,
it was a tradition when it was brand new. That's kind of how that worked out.
Yeah. I mean, exactly how... I mean, it's a tradition that you have a founder who then lies how he met a woman who was from an ancient, coven or something like this. So it's something that a few people did. Mostly the 20th century, some in the 19th, and Myatt is in that line.
Yeah, kind of on the tail end of it too, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense, because, I don't know, maybe it's... because I think this kind of... It's interesting that modernity produces these kind of things. Because, I mean, like in pre-modern societies, you have some authentic, spiritual beliefs, practices. No one makes a big deal out of it. It's just something that people do. And then, when you have capitalism and complete, loss of connection to, I don't know, any kind of relationship with nature or, completely atomized life and so on, you have these people trying to make sense of after their often senseless, completely isolated lives in capitalism, and then some of them make up these, occult beliefs. And so it kind of makes sense that a lot of these things have their origin in Britain as, one of the first industrialized capitalist countries. It
also makes sense that then later it would pick up heavily in the ex-USSR especially. With Rodnovery or whatever in Russia and Ukraine, which by some accounts, I think in Ukraine makes up a not insignificant portion of the population. I mean, Which is very similar because, of course, they're making up traditions that nobody actually, that don't exist. I mean, Slavic people weren't, literate. Yeah. They didn't write down any of their traditions, and most of that was 19th century falsifications.
They made up books that are supposedly ancient. And I mean, but this is how all these nationalists. I mean, this is why I mentioned myths as they should be simple. I mean, you always have these fabricated myths that are used as some kind of foundational material for a nationalist project. So these kind of occult beliefs in modernity are similar to that. You have a story of some origin that people then take for granted, and everything is built on it. But it's usually quite modern and doesn't have anything to do with anything ancient.
Plus, there's a lot of good anthropology on, we'll say, small scale sort of fetishization in a spiritual way, where it shouldn't be understood that a fetish in the, let's say, non-modern sense is something like a foolish belief in the power of an object. It tends to be something that is reflexively understood to be what it is, to be a fetish.
Yeah.
Whereas like these like neo-Nazi Satanist types are going like way out of their way to dig up like the powers from the ground. Like they've somehow fetishized fetishes in a way where they genuinely believe that they can exploit the magical power of like their blood in some crazy way. Like it's absolute lunacy, and it really is not like pre-modern society in any way.
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, because like this is some kind of a desperate, sometimes almost hysterical attempt to find some kind of some authenticity, like that is not there, you know. So you mix up, you know, you do whatever you know, like so you have Star Trek and you know,
right,
everything is there.
Star Trek and runes and the same thing, and then
it's a desperate attempt, like I guess, to convince yourself that your life has some meaning and to impress people. And I guess in the age of internet, someone will be impressed, but whatever you do. But I mean, obviously, most of the time it doesn't work. Like when you're trying to impress the person you're interviewing them, that you will, you know, challenge them to a duel with deadly weapons and they just laugh to your face. But I guess someone is impressed by that.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
It's obviously like a kind of fleeting thing too, considering how many times somebody like Myatt has changed his religion and affiliation kind of on a whim, right? I mean,
well, yeah, and also just straight up lies to people's faces about ever being affiliated with any of them.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, for honorable reasons.
Of course.
But Mason and like his mentor Pierce are very, when I said they are no nonsense, you were right to like point out that everything they say is nonsense, and that's completely true. But there is this attitude of kind of, I don't know, it's...
Yeah.
I'm not a wordy individual. Mm-hmm. I like bottom lines all the way. Mm-hmm. I won't waste two words where one will do.
Well, I guess this is also when they become, if like Myatt's like super British, they're super American in this way.
Yeah. I mean, but they are much more at ease. I don't know why, because much more at ease with who they are and how they live, and like much more adjusted, I would say, to like capitalist society. You know, they're like like Mason doesn't hide that he does like these super middle class things and aspires to that kind of way of life. You know, like he calls the cops on like kids who, I don't know, are vandalizing a plastered deer that he has in the yard. You know, so I don't know what's the root of that kind of American style of, like, he's not trying to impress
white
people.
Man in Ohio. I mean, I guess, I think it's just, you know.
That's what I was thinking too, yeah.
Kind of society's tailored around you.
Yeah, and he genuinely believes that he has the right to people's attention and understanding, and he isn't to be judged by his lowers. You know, it's weird because it's very deceptive. It's because it sounds like he's the kind of guy you'd have a beer with, that kind of George W. Bush sort of attitude, you know. But in fact, I think he's extremely well. I mean, he's highly self-inflated. He definitely considers himself morally above others. So, and there is an elitism to him. But that's also embedded in Nazism in general. I mean, the whole point is to have like a natural elite, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like he's I mean, besides being a Nazi psychopath, he's the person that I would never want to have a beer with, because just he's so boring somehow. Like, I don't know, like he has.
I guess I didn't mean you. I meant more like somebody's bad dad.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess. But I mean, I don't know. Like, he doesn't. I don't know.
No, he's extremely mundane.
Yeah, I mean, Myatt is like really trying his best to be somehow attractive.
Myatt is flamboyant. Like, he has rituals. He's got crystals.
Mason doesn't care.
No, Mason's never touched a crystal in his life.
He may have touched a different kind of crystal.
Well, that's, yeah.
What I mean.
That would account for a few things. And that'd also be in the tradition of Nazism, too.
I mean, Mason's like only attempt to be somehow, I guess, attractive to people is his connection with Charles Manson. Like, that's the thing that he, and then he understood it as like, okay, this is like something that people are into. I don't know.
Yeah, you can see him nerding out with his like alternative friends when Siege was getting published. You know.
Yeah.
He was all into it. He loved having a little clique.
But I think even with the Manson stuff, he knew his audience, right? I mean, it's not like everybody, not like the average person was into Manson in the same way that like Manson fans were into Manson,
Yeah, he was a big fish in a small pond that's now sadly become a lake. Fuck.
What, of Manson fans?
No, I mean of these sorts of weirdo Nazi types.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel like there's more now than there were at the time of Siege's publication? Like, because the weirdo Nazi scene was pretty big then too. So,
well, I mean, there are more people who are into Siege now. I don't know. I mean, there were Nazis then, a lot of them, but like these Siege people, it's kind of a newer phenomenon, no?
Yeah, I think it's more generally visible than it used to be. At least if you didn't, exist in certain circles. I mean, like, I think back in the day, even, 15 years ago or so, you wouldn't run into Nazis. Like, maybe if you were into, like, some aspect of subcultural scenes, for example, in the U.S., you wouldn't really see Nazis. If you were in the punk scene, maybe, you'd see, like, a dude in a screwdriver shirt or, that exists, like,
right,
as a Nazi subculture. But, you wouldn't see them as you do now on the internet. It's just fucking everywhere. Like, before they cracked down on Nazis on Twitter or whatever, you could see a lot of it if you were on any kind of social media.
yeah, it's true.
I'm not necessarily sure that there are more of them. I think there might be, but it's certainly more. It's more visible in a different way. I don't want to be like, well, the internet's changed things. 'Cause
But it has, though. I mean, I think you're completely right. Like, I was just thinking now about the proliferation of signs and symbols and, like, shibboleths and stuff. Maybe that's the wrong word to use, but, like, the language is very difficult to keep up with.
The internet changed, things, for example, for Myatt in a drastic way, no?
Oh, absolutely.
ONA is internet phenomenon. I mean, it never was. I mean, it was like him and his one or two friends, and now it's it's a bunch of websites. But I mean, it's nothing in actual like real life. I mean, outside of internet. But still, I think he's probably very satisfied with this project now.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
No.
yeah, but not publicly, of course.
Yeah.
He's still getting his followers to publish that interview to somehow prove that he's not Anton Long.
Oh my God. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense to do that in any way.
No, it's like very desperate and sad.
So maybe he's not satisfied, or I don't know. Like,
I think it's probably not a genuine attempt to deny that he's Anton Long. He just wants to be mysterious. I think he's intelligent enough that he knows that what makes him attractive is the mystery to some people. So I think that's it. I think he has to deny that in order to be this guy who is rumored to be Anton Long, which is way more interesting to many things than the guy who is Anton Long. I think,
right.
Like, a lot of people would just not be interested if he confirmed, I'm Anton Long.
Yeah, they'd be like, so what? We knew that all along.
Yeah.
It's very dumb. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of mental and emotional effort people make for this man. Yeah. I just can't for the life of me understand why. I really can't.
Well, I don't know. People are fucked up,
Yeah, people must be pretty fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, very fucked up. I mean, they want to. I mean, some people are trying to find some meaning in their life. Some people just want to be entertained. They want them. People like mysteries.
Yeah. Do we have any mysteries we can give them instead of this shit? What's a good mystery?
Well, there is that Malaysian airliner.
Well, I know. I mean, for me, the mystery is maybe people can write to us. Does the mysterious British academic at Oxford connected to ONA who Myatt supposedly knew 25 years ago, does this person exist?
All right.
I would like to know.
Yeah, we got a few mysteries. Yeah.
I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
But if you have any information...
But see, this is how it works.
Us.
Like, we know that this guy is a liar, and then he says, our whole show is, like, first arc is like based on like trying to tell people, okay, this guy is a phony asshole liar, but there is still this thing that's kind of intriguing to me. Does this person exist?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's that fucking aeonic
Makes you come
magic,
back for more.
Man.
Yeah,
that's that black magic he's been talking about. Yeah. It's really just like you say so much bullshit, you make this like stench cloud around you where like it's really difficult to see through. Yeah. And people are like, hey, what's that gigantic stench cloud? Is it a garbage dump? Is it like a dead animal? But no, it's David Myatt. Yeah. All right. It's a method, I guess. But then Mason, with literally no mystery whatsoever, manages to become equal to Myatt in his influence on this new generation of internet Nazis.
I think he's more influential.
Yeah,
than
more
Myatt, much
influential.
more.
Well, it should. You're
Because I think
absolutely
that
right.
kind of whole
You're absolutely
09A
right.
thing is lost on a lot of people. I mean, as we saw on Iron March too, Slavros fucking hated Myatt. A lot of people were like, "This is
it was
really
a
stupid."
meme. It was a joke.
Yeah.
As it is.
Because Siege is quote unquote practical, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, Mason had a completely different style of marketing. Like, he wrote this one book that's like Siege, that's his product, and it's very simple, and that's it. And Myatt is this mysterious asshole who writes 10,000s of pages of nonsense it's
there's something really pathetic about it. Just really just grasping. And
I mean,
grasping
that's the difference in style. Mason just tells you who he is, and this guy wants to intrigue you. You need to
I also
search.
lived at a monastery one time, and then
He lived in 2 monasteries. He was a Christian monk. He was also a Buddhist monk. And,
Yeah. I'm sure he took all of that really seriously.
Yeah, I'm sure he really understood the theology of all these religions. That
I
he's
never said I
professed
was
at some point.
associated with the Buddhist monastery. I had a
I
couple
spent
friends.
time.
I had
in
a
the Buddhist
roommate who was
monastery.
Buddhist.
yeah.
That doesn't mean that I was Buddhist at any point in my life.
Yeah, he's such a pretentious prick. He is explaining to the interviewer, well, I mean, I don't know what you mean by infiltrate. When I said infiltrate, I didn't mean join. I just meant I knew a few people, I would so the word infiltrate doesn't mean that, But he's somehow pretentiously explaining this.
So, guys, it's been a crazy ride. I've enjoyed the trip with you. I needed your support and your sanity to help me get through these Nazi Satanism things and siege things and Temple of Blood writings, and a part of me has died, but it wasn't a part I was using, so I feel pretty good about it overall. But maybe we should talk about what's coming down the pipeline here. What are we going to assault these people with next? What new Nazi fans are we going to pick up?
Yeah, I mean, so far we didn't mention so much. In the episode so far we also covered Temple of Blood, which are Myatt's American followers,
right?
In some way, also creative. They managed to make it even worse in some way.
Yeah, whenever America takes a movie from the UK, it's exactly what happened here. It's just more violence, less perspicacity, and that's it.
So in the next part of our arc, we'll cover American followers of Mason, specifically all the siege-built groups, as they call it, groups that were influenced by siege,
of which there are far too many.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they claim to see siege as their Bible. I mean, it's questionable how many of them read it. I guess some of them did. But some of these groups are also influenced by Myatt. So we have the great synthesis that we're going to cover between these two assholes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a mess, too. I think we're going to cover maybe something like 8 of these groups.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most important one is Atomwaffen, and then the others, most of them, the others were kind of modeled after it, I would say, in their aesthetics as well. And it has its origin in the Iron March internet forum, and the aesthetics as well, and the ideology.
Which we'll also get into a little bit as well.
It's also it's a good time for these episodes to be coming out now, too, because a lot of these guys are getting sentenced right now, or not sentenced, as the case may be. A lot of that's going around. Probably we'll have to update y'all at the end of the arc, but the story ain't over for this group that's coming.
Some of them... some of people influenced by this siege build trend were also part of the Capitol Hill riots, which is kind of very bizarre because it was you had people from these 2 strains of American new fascism. One is QAnon there, whose main focus is this fight against the pedophile Satanist in power, and then next to them you have the pedophile Satanist.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, what a fun
Arm
mix.
in arm.
What's their synthesis going to be like? You know, what's it going to look like if Atomwaffen is Mason and Myatt shoved together? What is QAnon and Atomwaffen going to look like shoved together? Well, how would that?
I'm sure
look
there's
though?
already some sort of synthesis that we haven't even really seen. 'Cause-
Humor me for a minute, though. Let's think about this. Just
Okay.
What would that? What do you think that would look like? What would QAnon?
Well, listen, there is a guy in the Balkans somewhere who is a conspiracy theorist since the 90s, and so a lot of people in the Balkans, like nationalists, they have these mythologies. Like, you know, every country in the Balkans, like usually they have this idea how their nation is the ancient one, like from
and
the
not just the ancient one, the most ancient
Right.
one.
Yeah.
Of like all nations.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone else are like their descendants whose problem is that they're denying really who they are. Like this is like everyone is denying that they're Croatian or they're Hungarian. You know, Jesus was Hungarian.
Yeah.
So a lot of shit like that. So this guy is interesting because he had this take on reptilians when he says that he's from Serbia, and he said like, well, Serbs are reptilians, and that's good. You know, so like he's like from his perspective, we are the reptilians, and that's like a good thing. Reptilians are not bad guys in that.
Okay. So we're looking at like
scenario.
a reptilian future then, where the reptilians have been rehabilitated into the neo-Nazi movement, and they're not seen as the sort of
maybe something
force.
like this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So it's more of it's not
It's
so much
signaling
like
the Serb takeover of the world.
Yeah.
Which is imminent.
I mean, I can see like, okay, in this like James Mason Atomwaffen ideology, I could see them as saying, you know, like, well, we are the original reptilian spawn, like the Aryans are like meant to rule this world,
right. Yeah.
Something like this, and we are not like Satanist pedophiles. This is the sign of our superiority.
Yes.
And these mundanes are, you know, like negating our natural right to be that, something like this. I mean,
So wait, are you seeing pedophilia being folded into? Well, I guess it'd have to be really. It's like the last thing to go with Nazis. isn't
Well,
it?
it is QAnon and also reptilian, like David Icke type of theories. It is a part of it, like because.
But are you picturing
it's-
them like taking on that role, like celebrating their reptilian pedophilia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, in a way they are doing it already, but they're not connecting it with this other mythology from the QAnon. But like, you know,
It's got legs.
These like David Icke and QAnon type of stuff. It's like maybe QAnon through David Icke is very influenced by, you know, Twin Peaks, and like the whole how the demons are like feeding themselves on human misery in the form of that. You know, they have that gorgonzola. What's the name of the thing in Twin Peaks they eat? It's like
Yeah.
it's like corn, something made out of corn, sweet. Like I don't know. It's American sweet corn thing. I don't know, but it's like materialized human misery. Like when you torture people, make them miserable. It's something that demons eat.
Yeah.
So in David Icke view of things, like reptilians are like basically that. They feed on human misery and that they produce, and like abusing children and is a part of that. So yeah.
Okay. So you're picturing like a reptilian nationalist movement.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think you might be right, actually.
I mean, Temple of Blood is basically that, no?
It's really, really close. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
very close,
I think
yeah.
they'll be the
Yeah.
ambassadors of this transformation. Yeah. They'll come
I mean,
back.
they're like psychic vampires. I mean, that's it. I mean, they're already there.
Man, they won. The Temple of Blood beat America. I'm calling it right now.
And it's interesting
now
to
in
see
Iron
how all of this is influenced by pop culture and, you know. Like
Oh,
this
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's built on like television logic is the funny thing about it. It's not, it doesn't react to real life in a normal way. It's, it has very little to do with real life, but it has everything to do with the story, you know? It's choose your own adventure, but where you kill people in the end in real life.
Yeah.
And where you're a Nazi.
And where, it says choose your own adventure, but
Choose
just as
your
a
own
Nazi.
adventure, but you start off as a Nazi, and then you can go any which way.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the proliferation of like reptilian nationalist fashfic, though. That's going to be fucking good. Maybe we should just get started on it now. You know?
Yeah.
Get ahead of the wave there.
I mean, this is it's. I think these kind of scenarios are like they're being in the making for a long time. I mean, even if you look at like Charles Manson, like in his group, I mean, they wanted to start a race war by killing a bunch of white people, even like a pregnant woman, and in order to like start off this like basically some kind of a global Holocaust that will kill off most of humanity. After which they will come out of underground and be the ruling class.
Yeah, right.
Which is like, I mean, that's what these people say the reptilians want to do. Or, I don't know, like the Bill Gates or someone. I mean, they want to kill off most of humanity in order to be the ruling class. But somehow Charles Manson is an idol to these people. Because he wants to do what they say Bill Gates wants to do. You know?
Yeah.
Only, like, in a very inefficient way.
That's why I think if there is like a reptilian national movement, I think it will probably be interpreted in the U.S. as a left movement because I think it will be seen as like a liberation kind of nationalism. So shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up with
having trouble with that.
No, hold on. Let me get you there. so, sorry, Ray. What did you just tell me? Fuck.
How Charles Manson is Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, but this is exactly why the reptilians can't be adopted, I don't think, by the right in a meaningful way, is because like the point of them is to establish a difference between those who deserve to have that power and those who don't deserve it. And I think like, which is, you know, what the Jews have always done for them as well, being like the original, whatever, shape-shifting European or something, you know. But so I think if it's not the reptilians themselves, they're going to have a reptilian slot left over, or maybe they just go back to being anti-Semitic again. That could happen. They're already there. I mean, they don't have to go back.
I mean, they're already.
They just step it up again, you know. So maybe in that case.
But like, I didn't understand. What do you think the problem is?
That I think you'd have like a reptilian sort of liberation nationalist movement that would rise up, right? And it would be a group of Nazis. But I think that a completely just like macaroni brained left would see them as being would have to see them, assuming that they accepted that they were actually reptilian, as being like the long-standing bugaboo of the far right, and would take on their cause as a symbolic reactionary gesture. So I think you'd end up with an element of the left wing supporting reptilian pedophiles.
Well,
that's usually how it goes, right?
I mean, really, it's not so far-fetched. Which is so fucked up to say and actually kind of believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah, so in that case, this is great. Now we can set up that next season. So what we're going to give you guys, listeners, is
the next part of
this arc. Yeah, is what we're going to give you is the prehistory of the next great struggle for reptilian Nazism. Maybe even in some sort of turf war against vampires.
I mean, as everybody might have realized, all of this has turned our brains to mush.
Yeah.
And we're no longer functioning human beings.
No, yeah.
We're really, really struggling here.
Yeah, so the siege pill groups, or that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, don't sound so excited about it, Ray.
Yeah, right.
Calm the fuck down over there. Yeah, we're going to start you with Adam Waffen, and if you can deal with that, we'll just keep feeding you that shit.
I mean, they do become more and more miserable, no?
They really do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're going to end this arc, though, with a long look at the base, which I feel like is kind of comic relief in a really terrifying way. But, So hopefully we'll end on a light note.
Because they're stupid in a whole different level than the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah.
That they, like, fuck up so badly, constantly. On, like, really, like, epic scales. I mean, it's just...
I mean, not to give too many spoilers, or maybe they didn't fuck up, you know?
Yeah.
And this was the point.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So we'll get there. All right, y'all.
All right.
See you next time. Thanks for getting this far with us.
Bye.
Yep.